All right, I'm going to keep kind of ripping through here, just using these as a launch point of some thoughts, and then probably our as we go through and we're getting towards Labor Day here, I find that we'll go through a couple more weeks of this, and then I'll find another series or something. But I probably, as we have the opportunity, there's so many things in this chapter just kind of leap out to us and stuff that is, sometimes I won't comment. I'll just say true because it is true, no matter whether we have commented or not. This the first verse here: the Lord abhors dishonest scales, but accurate weights are His delight. There is a need, and this gets back to, it says in some place in Proverbs, I can't remember where that one was, but it said that a dishonest justice, basically, when justice is not served properly, then a nation will groan. I think we're seeing that even now, and I don't care if you voted for Donald Trump or hate him with all your guts. What they are doing right now in weaponizing the justice system in America is wrong. I don't care if it's Donald Trump or if it was Joe Biden. If you cannot put people up on charges or just saying things. When you start doing that, we're in a danger as a nation. And I don't say I like everything about Donald Trump, but I'll tell you something, this nation's recoiling right now of what they see that is happening because of I haven't looked at it. Dinesh D'Souza has a thing about the voting last time. He's got a documentary he did, and they can trace out and do some scaling stuff because this harvest balloting stuff is wrong. It's just big time wrong. And there's just things about it. It don't matter who is running for office. There's just something that's wrong. In Alabama, it's one vote per ballot, and you got to have voter ID. I love that. Anytime somebody opposes that, they're trying to get away with something. Because that's what you can see. When I see the Lord abhors dishonest scales. Yeah, we're talking about maybe agricultural system where you weigh things down or lighten things up, you move things around, you put your finger in the balance. That is wrong. He abhors it. But he also, I believe, abhors injustice. And that's what irritates me more than anything else because, I remember in the presidential election, and I don't know who the votes went for, but since I run this place over here, if I were to ever bring a bunch of ballots out from under the table and start feeding them through, then y'all better have a problem with that. I don't care who it's for. It doesn't matter. That's just wrong. And they did that over in Atlanta, and you find yourself looking at that going, and nobody wanted to question it. You're going, but I will tell you this. The only time that would ever happen, you would ever see me running any ballots through those machines, if the power goes off, we cannot hook up a generator to those machines. If this power's off, we continue to vote, we pull a slot down, you'll slide your ballot in there. It will be considered a voted ballot, even though it hasn't been tabulated. But we cannot do. At the end, towards the end of the evening, we'd have to pull all those out and feed them into the machine. Now, we've never had to do that, ever. And I keep going, I will go out there and get my generator and hook this thing up so you won't see me putting a pile of ballots in, because people can still vote. And even if the power goes off this building, like a storm or something, people will still be able to vote, but they're going to just slide it in there. But it has to be fed into those tabulation machines. Now, they weren't doing that in Atlanta. They were just bringing out ballots and starting feeding them in because there was nobody had been, not that many people had been there. But when you bring a suitcase out, we would have to, as inspector, I have to unlock that machine. I have to bring the flap down, and there's a special compartment. They don't go all the way down to where all the voted ballots are. There's a special compartment they'll go into. You can't, that's the only place it can go. So I have to pull those out, and then we have to, at least two of us have to be sitting there through each machine, and we have to feed those in. And if they stop, because sometimes you get people overmarking, we have to send them on through as they are. We can't correct them. We can't do anything. If we change that, that's just the way we would do things. Then you'd have to trust us to be honest to do that. And then you'd also, they really don't want us doing it while you got a bunch of people in there because it does look like you're stuffing the ballot box. There would be people calling left and right. You know what they're doing over there at New Hope? They got a bunch of ballots they're feeding through. Well, I don't know why. I was appalled as a voting precinct inspector of what I saw when they brought that out from underneath the table. We brought a bunch of ballots, just started feeding. I was appalled by that. I thought, who in the world can orchestrate this thing like it is. Now, do they all go for Joe Biden? Do they go for Trump? I don't know. It doesn't matter. That was wrong. The Lord abhors injustice. He abhors it. That when you get the dishonest scales, I understand that because it just drives me crazy. And so when I look at what we do here in the state of Alabama, and Attorney General, and not everybody Shelby County has these tabulating machines. Not everybody uses these same ones. One of the reasons, because I keep asking, I say, why don't we hook up to the internet? You know, you can get instant feeds. And they say, because we can get a lot more corruption that way. People could get in there. They could corrupt it. You know, they could find a way that they could move the ballots and stuff. They could do that. And said, so we have to put them on a thumb drive and out of that one machine. And so whatever's tabulating that machine, the thumb drive's there, and then we have to sign it off to the deputy who carries it on down to Columbiana for the full. So there is some checks and balances. Can it be manipulated? I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I've sat there and thought many a times when I'm doing these polls, how could you beat this system? And there's one or two ways. Maybe you get one or two ballots, but you couldn't get a multiple. You couldn't put, because we have potential of 2,600 people that vote in here, something like that. We know if in the presidential election, we'll get like 50% or 60%. This precinct usually around 60% of presidential. Of those 2,600 show up. If I had 80%, then somebody's going to start questioning. And they're going to go back to that list and see who I checked off as being here. And they're going to check that because traditionally, I've had 60%, 65. If I get to 80 or 90%, if I had 100% voting here, well, you're talking about red flags going, because they're going, ain't no way you had 100% voting. We've never had it. And so those are the things that they watch for is irregularities of patterns, because you can have patterns. And so that's why I'm saying it's not hard to catch some of this stuff that's going on. But anyway, because Donald Trump said there's something wrong with the election, he's being brought up on indictments. And I'm going, there's something wrong with that. If you can't question whomever's in charge and they're going to indict you, then I got a problem with that. And don't get yourself wrong. I'm not saying Donald Trump is a savior of this world, because he's not. He's not even the savior of America. But if they can do that to him, who is an ex-president, be careful. Be careful, because that's just dishonest scales that are going on. Because I can remember when Hillary Clinton said the same thing and did the same thing. And so I'm not just ranting politically. I'm just saying it's dishonest scales that we see that's going on. When pride comes, then comes disgrace. With humility comes wisdom. I agree with that, because anytime we walk in humility, anytime you get a chance to choose your pride over humility, understand this. You will gain so much more wisdom. That second burger's getting me. You gain so much more wisdom if you walk in humility instead of being, and that means sometimes, and this goes for our married couples, you ain't always right. I'm talking to both of you. It's not always right. You understand that. And you're not always the one that's going for the forgiveness. I understand that too. Even though you may feel like it, you may feel like I'm 70-30. Well, at that point, you are walking in pride. Be careful. Learn a lesson and find yourself, and that goes for anything. It goes for any part of your life. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. Being a man or a woman of your word is what guides a person, the integrity of the upright. What you say what you mean what you say. When you do that, it will guide you. And sometimes you can swear to your own hurt, but don't swear. Don't make an oath that you're not going to keep. Don't do it. And, you'll find, especially in ministry, I'll see what I can do. Somebody asks you, can you do this? Can you do that? I'll see what I can do. I will not give you my word. I will not guarantee I will do that. I'll see what I can do. And because I don't want to seem like, well, you changed your mind. You're duplicitous. No, I'm going to give you my word on stuff I can do. If I can't do it, I'll see what I can do. That's hard, because sometimes you want to go, you don't mean it. And that there are times you say things you don't mean, and you understand that, but you go back and you make it right. but the integrity of the upright guide them. So what we say, we mean what we say. Then he goes on in verse 4, says, wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. Self-explanatory in a way. Righteousness will deliver from death. True. The righteousness of the blameless make a straight way for them, but the wicked are brought down by their own wickedness. I was watching I know I watch too much Gunsmoke, but I was watching a Western the other night, and sometimes those storylines get so frustrating because you can just kind of, if Marshall Dillon didn't have Chester, and Chester irritates me, if he didn't have Chester asking him questions, we wouldn't know what's coming in the next part of the dialogue because Chester's always asking the dumbest questions. Well, Marshall Dillon, you think you shot him because he was a bad man? And we're like, well, Chester, yeah, you shot him because. And then there's sometimes Marshall Dillon just look at you and go, get out of town before I kill you. And he would say that. And you're kind of going, you can't do that. But he would, get out of Dodge before I kill you. And so, but the wickedness, and there was something that came on, and I thought, well, that's pretty obvious they're wicked, but the storyline we're watching from another perspective. Sometimes you can see the wickedness and you're going, there's just something not right about that. Or you can sense wickedness about people. You ever been around somebody that you can just sense the darkness and the wickedness, and you kind of go, ooh, that don't feel right. And you can't explain it even. And they look like a good person on the outside, but you can't explain it. And you're kind of going, You want to go take a bath. You're kind of like, this is something, it just doesn't feel right, They just make you feel yuck. The wicked are brought down by their own wickedness. The righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the unfaithful are trapped by the evil desires. It'll come out sooner or later. It's there. When the wicked man dies, his hope perishes. All he expected from his power comes to nothing. I go back, I don't know why I've been thinking. I wrote an article today, I'm behind, I know, on the newsletter. And in that newsletter article, I talked about too many times we're told as ministers to stay in our lane, they can't talk about that, and I'm like, it's wide open. Anything we want to talk about, we can talk about, because if you don't interject proper biblical truths into stuff, then it's just a wide, broad lane. I mean, they've got some big old highways over in China, I think David told us about. Said they got like 15 or 20 lanes of highways, and ain't nobody driving them because nobody can afford a car, but they got them, they build them. And he said that's just part of it. But I look at it and I'm sitting there going, in all of what we see, that hope that perishes once the wicked die, it said it is expected the power comes nothing. And I got to thinking about that Jeffrey Epstein, thinking of how much, I don't know why I got thinking about him today, because you don't find, and I would even say, and I know seems like I pick on Democrats a lot, but I don't make any apologies, some of it. But our former President Clinton was on that Epstein plane. It was recorded. He was on there. Nothing was ever brought for that. That man was evil. And anybody, if you hang out with evil, and that doesn't mean President Clinton did anything wrong, but if you hang out with evil, be careful. That Prince Andrew hung out with him, liked him. They were good friends. Seeing him, and I know the Queen was discomforted by that, but you look at a person like that and you kind of go, he had all the wealth, had everything, and nobody could figure out where his money came from. I know, kind of where it came from, but you see that he perishes, and all he expected to come from his power came to nothing. Now, whether he committed suicide or whether that ex-cop and his jailmate did it for him, I don't know. And nobody will ever know that until we get to glory one day, and that won't even matter, But I will tell you this, that all the wickedness, everything they expect that comes from their power comes to nothing. And because I look at all the wealthy people, and you find yourself, and I read about them, and of all the stuff that they have, one thing they don't have is peace. And unless they know Jesus, they just don't have peace. I've known wealthy people that have Jesus, and there's a difference to that wealth. If you don't have Jesus, and you can have all the wealth, I would dare to say that as he gets older, isn't Bill with Microsoft, what's his name? Gates. got a lot of money. I mean, he's one of the richest men. Elon Musk, rich. Yeah, he's rich. But of all the stuff they have, it can't buy peace. It can't buy that. I mean, the guy that, as I said, that can win the lottery, whoever won the billions, the lottery, there's somebody that won that. I hope they do well with it. Hope it don't ruin them. You know, I know we'd all like to try, but we'll see. The righteous man is rescued from his trouble, and it comes on the wicked instead. I don't question this, but we are rescued from our trouble in the end. But sometimes it seems like the wicked, and as David said in the Psalms, why is the wicked prospering, God? Why are you letting them do this? And I think it's part of his grace and mercy. He lets them live because he wants to redeem them. Is our life troubled because we are redeemed? The Bible tells us it will be. We're not guaranteed that there's going to be this plush carpet that we go through all of life. We are guaranteed that God's going to rescue us. I look at the ones who, I mean, we are very fortunate here in America to live. Even during this time, it can be a lot of uproar and stuff. China still will not let you come out forwardly and be in your faith. You have Saudi Arabia, or you can go to Afghanistan, whom is even, they're finding resistance. The Taliban's in charge. Reading the other day, there's another resistance group coming up that is challenging the Taliban. They're asking for our help, like we're going to go back into Afghanistan. I hope not. But they want to overthrow the Taliban. The Taliban wants to erase anything to do with Christianity. That's there. Pakistan's getting about as bad. You know, they want to erase Christianity. That's where some of the most thriving churches before the Muslim Empire, the Ottoman Empire, before that, some of the most thriving churches was in that area, in the Middle East, in Turkey, and even up into Iran. And you'll find yourself looking at all that going, they try to stamp out the church. I wished it would come sooner than later, but it says the wicked, it will come on the wicked eventually. You know, I can remember the fear we sensed and the closeness of war, even though Iran could not ultimately destroy us, kind of like with North Korea. Can they do damage? Yes. Will they want to? Yes. But I can remember, young ones don't remember Ayatollah Khomeini, but he was the one when they took over our embassy in Iran. We were in college at the time, and I can remember calling up a Marine recruiter. I was ready to go. Man, I was like, this has got me so mad. And I'm glad I kind of calmed down, but I called him about getting in the Marines. I was like, man, this is just wrong. And I'm glad I did calm down. It wasn't my call, but I can remember the fear that Ayatollah Khomeini had struck because he had hit that, or the fear that we hit with the 9/11, or whenever we see the terrorist attacks. But it says they're going to come down. Sometimes I wish it was sooner than later. Verse 9, it says, with his mouth the godless destroys his neighbor, but through knowledge the righteous escape. Our mouth is pretty strong. What we can do and the damage we can do. You can build up or you tear down. So that's important. I go back to the fellow I went to school with, and his mama was a teacher, but his name was Paul Remsen, and his mama was a teacher, and couldn't get Paul to speak evil of anybody. Gosh, he was too good. It drove me crazy. We try to draw him into conversation. We're talking to somebody down. He would never do it. His mama raised him right. I wasn't right. But, I mean, we would just do it to try to see if because we all knew that. We all knew he wasn't going to say bad about anybody. That's just the way he was raised. And I know he probably feared his mama too, but there was things that you just like, that he would never, never. Even though we knew what we were doing, he just wouldn't do it. He wouldn't play along. It said, the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. When the wicked perish, there are shouts of joy. The man who shot Liberty Valance, if y'all remember that one, in John Wayne movie, when he finally got his comeuppance. And it was John Wayne that had to do it. And Jimmy Stewart got all the credit for it, not to ruin anybody's, if you've never seen the movie. But yeah, when he came down, when Liberty Valance finally terrorized the community, and finally when he came down, the city rejoiced, and they gave Rance the credit for it, but he really didn't do it. There were shouts of joy, and I know it's a movie, it's not real life, but it happens in real life. Through the blessings of the upright, a city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked it is destroyed. Can you put that and look at that and say, even some of our news media today? I do. I look at that and I go, the blessing of the upright city is exalted, but then you start looking at I look at what's happening in Oregon. You go out to Portland, you go out to different places on the West Coast. There are people who are really just making some bonehead decisions. I mean, they just don't got any brains up there or something. And people are leaving because the city, they're giving passes to all the people, all the criminals. I don't know if it bothers y'all, but I watch when I see on the news, when you see these guys come in and do this mass shoplifting. I mean, they'll drop 18 or 20 people come in, and they can wipe a store out. And I'm like, there's something wrong with this. And then when they get caught, they get a no bail. They get in, and then they put them back out on the streets. So there's no punishment. Whenever you don't have a justice system that deals out punishment, you get more of what you're allowing. It'll come even more. Now, I blame the kids. I blame the parents who, there was a little girl I was reading about, 16-year-old. I think it was on the news today, but I was reading about her. She and a friend were at McDonald's, got in an argument over a sauce. They stabbed each other, and one of them died. Now, that's at 2 a.m. in the morning. Something wrong with that. I feel for that mama. She's hurting. Her baby's dead. But be out at 2 a.m. in the morning for a 16-year-old. My mama would have found me. We didn't have cell phones, didn't have beepers. But at 2 a.m. in the morning, my mama would have found me and busted my tail all the way home. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that big a world we were in, though. I mean, all you had to do is ask a couple of questions. You're like, yeah, I saw a bunch of them hanging out over there. I mean, I would have dreaded that day to be standing at Vestavia Bowling Alley at 2 in the morning to see Charlotte Acton come walking across that parking lot. Woo, I would have said, guys, y'all got a cover for me because I'm going to crawl out of here. I wouldn't want to see that. And she would have done it. But anyway, off subject. Said, the city is blessed when the upright city is exalted. There's a blessing in that. You watch some of these cities that are doing it right. They bring people to justice. That's what's got to happen. When you have like in Minneapolis, I think, not Minneapolis, in the suburbs, Minneapolis somewhere, whole police departments have resigned. I mean, they just said, I'm just done. So that leaves it to the sheriff of that county to police that city at that point. But they said, you can't get anybody. And that's what more and more, not ours, Shelby County Sheriff's Office, we're still down. Probably we could still use about 10 deputies. We're still down number-wise. But we've got like 7 in the academy or 8 in the academy, several in training card, a lot of young people coming in as their career. Some of them coming out of the Army. That's what they like too. But Shelby County doesn't have that problem as much as you go to some of these cities where you know your city council is not going to support you. And that's not necessarily in that Alabama as much. But you can go places, and it doesn't take much further north to go places, and you're going, they're not supporting. I think even in Kentucky, the black lieutenant governor, I think he's lieutenant governor. No, he's attorney general. In Kentucky, he's running for governor. And he's a Republican. He's running on a conservative ticket of law and order. I think if somebody would just speak up and say, look, we can't have this. A city will groan. A state will groan. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but somebody had said something. We were talking about going to our next General Assembly. We're going to where? Evansville, Indiana. But somebody talked about going to Chicago, and I was like, I ain't going. And so there's some great things to see in Chicago. I said, no, but at risk of your own life, But, I mean, it's not downtown Chicago anyway, because they don't really have the same sense that we do. And plus, they have so much gun control that you couldn't carry your own weapon. You get arrested. A man who lacks judgment derides his neighbor, but a man of understanding holds his tongue. That's one of the hardest things you'll do. And you always know the person can hold their tongue because you see the blood coming out right here. And they're biting it. You're going, I could say something right. That's that sarcastic side of me. There's sometimes if you see me kind of wallering my mouth around, That's because I'm holding my tongue, I'm biting it, because it could be very sarcastic like that. They won't mean the same here. A gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy man keeps a secret. Not just a gossip, but if you've been given something, this is something we do as ministers. If you want to keep a secret, what do? Don't tell anybody. If you want to keep somebody keeps, don't tell anybody. That's the way you keep a secret. When you start telling somebody, just about every time you're going to find yourself, well, that person share. It'd be a prayer request. Don't tell anybody. Well, let me share that. One of the problems that we have after a critical incident with the police officers and fire department stuff, we'll do a debrief and do a defuse and all this stuff. One of the things we emphasize in that, because we always have a minister in there. Now we've got peer support, which that covers the Alabama confidentiality law. That covers confidentiality, even in a group setting. Everybody expects that to be confidential. I remember one guy came out one time, and I heard about it. I hadn't seen him or talked to him since, but that would be the last time he was ever on a critical incident debriefing, because he made mention to somebody who wasn't a part of that. He said, yeah, we had to have a debriefing over those people were really messed up. And his assessment, because I was in that debriefing, his assessment was not true. It wasn't. It was bad. It was a bad setting, and I was in that because I was a part of the scene. But I was like, it wasn't that bad. People wasn't really that. But his assessment was, yeah, we had to be in there. But it made him sound good. He was important to be in there. And I'm telling you, that got back to the people that was in that setting. And they're going, they will never trust him again. Because that's his assessment of them. Well, and ain't no cop in the world want to know, hey, they really messed up. They don't want somebody saying that in a confidential setting. They really messed up, man. They really bad. And he was talking about a particular setting. You can talk about things when you're teaching somewhere, but you don't bring it to the setting. But he talked about that particular setting. So he betrayed a confidence. And I don't think he was ever asked to be back on another one, ever. And he probably won't be. For lack of guidance, a nation falls, but many advisors make victory the sure. Somebody's got to make a decision in the midst of that. I like if you go back into the war with Arnold Schwarzkopf, he had to make some decisions. I like the way he was very decisive in the first Gulf War. He said, we're going to go in and take out their eyes, we're going to take their ears out, and then we're going to crush them. I mean, he had this doom, doom, doom. This is what we're going to do. This is how 1, 2, 3, boom, boom, boom. And because everybody thought Saddam Hussein was going to be this formidable foe, and he wasn't. Once he unleashed a plan on them, boom, there it is. But lack of guidance, a nation will fall. It will. And I look at the North Korea. I'm using all contemporary. I can go back and use the Bible. You can find there are times that, let's just take even Solomon's son. He's asking, what should I do? And his guidance he got was go even heavier than your dad. Oh, man, that's not good. Not good at all. But that guidance, a nation will fall. Lack of guidance, a lack of that wisdom, a nation will fall. But many advisors make sure of victory. It's important to even hear the naysayers. It's important to hear somebody that deposes, that says, no, that's not good. You don't have to have unanimity every time, but you do have to be able to understand the flip side. If things are not going to go well, then you got to know what's going to happen. He who puts up security for another will surely suffer. That's that co-signing things. And whoever refuses to strike a hand in pledge is safe. And, yeah, don't co-sign unless you're willing to pay for it. I don't care how good they are. Because you don't know. They get hit by a truck tomorrow, and your name's on there. So they come back for you. I don't care if it's your kids. If it's your kids, you're okay. But understand, that's your debt then. That's the way it works. A kind-hearted woman gains respect, but ruthless men gain only wealth. Isn't that interesting? That kind-hearted woman, she's a good-hearted woman. Anyway, ruthless men only gain wealth. That is true they'll do whatever they got to do to get it. We had a death that started out as a suicide, and I was on the scene, and I was listening to people talk, and what the investigation kept going, and it was supposedly suicide, and everything that was said about this guy, there wasn't a lot of complimentary things said. It really wasn't. I mean, I was like, because I stand a lot of times with the family. I'm just there. I go between the cops, the family, that kind of thing. And I was listening, and I try to hear what I can hear and do what I can do, because I'm there on cops. And that's why I tell folks, if you want to confess or say something, you're like talking to the police at this point, because I'm going to tell them what you said. I am not your confidentiality. And I remember listening to people say he was like a scoundrel and stuff. And we were probably in that call, because we didn't move him and stuff. We were in that call a good 45 minutes to an hour. And then all of a sudden I get word from officers like, this wasn't suicide. Somebody killed him. I was like, oh, my role just changed. Because, I mean, I could be standing. We didn't know who did it. And come to find out it was a kid that was working, that was living there on that property. He got mad at him, killed him, and then went to work. They found him at work. He just went on to the place where he was working. And I was like, oh. So I back away. I'm like, I could be talking to the murderer. Who knows? You know, I don't want to mess up the case. Let me get back over here. But the guy didn't have the greatest of reputations, you know, the death. And you find out a lot about people when there's a death. I mean, you really do. People tell you stuff, and I can tell you as a preacher, I've been there at many funerals where they start telling you stuff, and you're going, and that helps me, because that lets me know, especially if I didn't know somebody and I'm doing the funeral, it helps me to understand what not to say. I've done funerals for loved ones, and they would tell me, it's like, ain't nobody in the family liked her. Then nobody liked her. We're all just here because we feel responsible to be here. I was like, good thing to know, because I don't want to paint something that's not there, and I need to know that. Those are good things I like to hear, and I don't paint them bad or good. I just need to know that, because there's certain qualities especially when you're doing a mama funeral. There are certain qualities about a mama that's universal, even if you don't know them. But if they don't fit that universality, you don't need to say it. You know, and also you don't need to stand and say, well, this person was a scoundrel. I love that story that, oh gosh, I can't think of the preacher. Because he talked about the guy that said that his brother died and need to do the funeral, but you need to say something good about him. And he said, if you'll say something good, I'll give you church for $50,100. And he said, wow, that's tough. Because he was a drunkard, he was an alcoholic, he was a scoundrel, he was horrible. Everybody knew how bad he was, but he had to do the funeral. And then to get the money to the church, he had to say something good about him. And so he said, all right, I'll do it. So he got up and said, I want you to know something. And he talked about the dead guy. He was a scoundrel. He cheated everybody in this town. Everybody hated him. He was an adulterer to his wife. His kids didn't want anything to do with it. He just litany of things. But he ain't half as bad as a brother sitting right there on the front row. I don't know if that's true or not, but I love it. Anyway, well, I don't know where I was on this thing, but that ruthless man gaining only wealth. Your funeral, you're preaching right now, you're preaching, however you live your life. A kind man benefits himself, which is true, but a cruel man brings trouble on himself. True. The wicked man earns deceptive wages, but he who sows righteousness reaps a sure reward. Another true statement. The truly righteous man attains life, but he who pursues evil goes to his death. I don't know how many times I've seen that in real life, that you'll find that folks that they can hasten their days. The young man that was killed on a Sunday morning at Adamsville, Tennessee, he was a mean drunk. He was trying to bust through the door to get after this guy who had stolen something, did something to him, and the guy just shot him through the door, and because he was still drunk, and he was just mean. And I was like, you know, you think nobody can hurt you, especially if you're high, but he met his maker. Not sure if he knew him, but he met him. He said, the Lord detests men of perverse heart, but he delights in those whose ways are blameless. Be sure of this, the wicked will not go unpunished, but those who are righteous will go free. That's one thing we have to hope for, and I said something Sunday, and I don't mean to reiterate this. I take less pleasure. I know David at times, he rejoiced when the wicked died. He was like, they dead, go God, kind of thing. Some of the Psalms, and it was like, because he got tired of seeing them prosper. And he was, but he, at the same time, the more I think about it, because I got people that hang out in my mind that I know did not make a commitment to Jesus Christ before they died. They bother me to this day. There's no recourse of action once you go out of this life. It's death, then judgment. It's going to come later, but there's judgment. You're in a holding pattern, that's in hell, or Hades, or Sheol, whatever you want to call it. But it's in a holding pattern. Those deaths bother me when I know they could have made a commitment to Jesus Christ, but they chose not to. And I've got some of those that they circle around in here. And sometimes they kind of poke their head up, and I'm going, whew, I can't think about that. Because I think there is no recourse for them. Now, God has final say. You say, why are you judging them in hell? I'm just telling you, out of their words, they said they didn't need Christ. Out of my belief in theology, you got to have Christ. He is the way, the truth, the life. No way to get to heaven, no way to get to the Father except through him. Pretty cut and dry when you look at it. You say, well, what if they made a commitment when they're young? I hope they did. That's my only thing I kind of hope for. Of course, I don't know how much this life is a preliminary. If you're used to doing evil and wickedness here, and you say, well, I made a commitment when I was young, when I was in Jesus, but yet you lived a life of evil, corrupt, and everything else, I hope there is maybe a wash station in heaven. I don't know. But I'd say once saved, always saved, but I say, what is saved? At this point, because I look at some of this going, I've seen people do that. They go, they didn't live a life worth 2 cents, but they did. They can point back to this point, and it was 12, 11, they made a commitment to Jesus. Some of their family tell me that. They made a commitment to Jesus. I said, I hope it takes the best I can do. I can't make a change for them. They can't make a change once they're dead. But at the same time, I don't know if there's like a car wash outside of heaven to clean you off before you get in. And it'd be the most unfamiliar place you ever thought about going. And there ain't no corruption going to be in heaven. And so if you all set up on it here and you think it's going to be there, it's like all the people always joke about, the old heavy rockers, you remember them? Oh, we're going to have a party in hell. No, come on now. You're being deceived right down that hole. You're not going to be no partying. You're going to wish you'd never partied in your life that way. So all that to say, there's still those few faces that still kind of bother me. That I can pull them up to this day and think about them because they didn't make that. I don't know how many times in college we'd have people sitting in our room, Lynn and myself, we'd have people sitting in our room, we would witness to them. And I was like, would you make a commitment to Christ? No. Man, I don't need that. And I'm like, dude, you need it. And I don't know, we don't cross paths anymore with those folks, but a few of them we've seen since, but not many. I said, but sure, this wicked will not go unpunished, but those who are righteous will go free. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion. True. I won't get into that. Yeah, pig snout. Yeah, that woman does. Yeah, I don't think I need to. I probably get in trouble. But that gold ring in a pig's snout, it's like putting lipstick on a pig. So, yeah. But we've seen that. There were far and few between girls that were really knockouts up in McKenzie, Tennessee when we were up there. They were just far. When we first got there, it was just far and few in between. Did you ever visit up there? Okay. Can you corroborate what I just said? Okay. Her brother was in college the same time I was.
I know the ones he brought home. I was like,
Don't say it too loud. And but there just wasn't that many in that little town of McKenzie. But there was this one girl, we called her Blue Eyes. Didn't even know her name. She worked at the pharmacy. We'd always go to Lynn and myself, different ones, we'd go to the pharmacy just to see her. I didn't need anything. We just, I think I need some eye drops. We just go, we all joked about it because at one time we say, there's this girl who works over, she's got the bluest eyes. And Oh, yeah, that's Blue Eyes. Nobody knew her name. Nobody was brave enough to ask her, you know. But we'd go there just to sneak a peek at Blue Eyes. She was so pretty behind the counter. So, anyway, then we went in one time. We were so disappointed because she had marks on her neck. We're going, Blue Eyes is not as pure as we thought she was. Anyway, nobody would ask her name, though. Desire of the righteous ends up only in good, but the hope of the wicked only in wrath. True. One man gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but becomes to property. It's easy to try to hold on, thinking you're doing good. You can never outgive God. Even some of the people that are, even if you go next door, the Bruno Academy, those folks were known for their giving. They were very Catholic family. But they were known for their giving, the Bruno family. I don't know much about them, but I know they were known for that. Their name was on a lot of things around here. So was Scrooge, but you know how that goes. He'd think he did it just for his name. One man gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, becomes poverty. A generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. Whatever you sow, you will reap. If you got something you can give. If you got a way that you can help somebody else, help somebody else. There does come a point in life, and this is where there are givers, there are takers, and if you are surrounded by, let's just say, percentage of people are takers, be careful because you're going to get worn out, you know. But if you got people that are givers around you, y'all going to try to outgive each other, which is good. That's a good thing. But you're going to be giving to people who are used to taking and never really replenishing the pile once they take. You know, I like these. I thought about it one time, and anybody want to do it, you can, but we're kind of off a beaten path, but doing one of those food pantry stand things out here where people can put stuff in, take things out. Whether it's empty or full is not up to me, okay? That's what I'm saying. But I've thought about having one of those out here where people could come up if they needed a meal or something. It would be in there, but it'd have to be kind of enclosed, you know. But what I like to see out of people, and this is just me, when you get back on your feet, you give. That's just what you do. But if, my problem would be I'd be out there going, hey, you've been here 3 weeks in a row. This is not Walmart. Get out of here, Give it to somebody else, No, I'm just joking. But I wouldn't concern myself with it. It's what I'd have to do because it would be one of those things, and then people come knocking, hey, things empty out here. I was like, whatever. Because there are churches that have that, and they do well with somebody that takes that on as a ministry, but that's not mine. I'm not doing that. We'll help feed people if it come up, but that's if they want help. They don't just want a handout. But if you're generous, you'll prosper. You refresh others, you'll be refreshed. Whatever you need in your life, do for somebody else. People curse the man who hoards grain, but blesses and crowns him who is willing to sell. Not just give, but sell. If you're hoarding and you don't want anybody else to have, that's one thing. He who hoards 368 Mustangs and don't give them away, I'm just kidding. Yeah, somebody got that. I saw where I was reading the story on Steve McQueen's Mustang. That was in the, what was that movie again? Daggone.
Steve McQueen was
Bullet. Yeah, that Bullet Mustang. I read more of the backstory on that here recently. It's kind of interesting. The family kept it undercover for so many years. And it's sold as the highest sell of any Mustang ever. It's $3-something million. His dad bought it for like less than $3,000 or something like that. And Steve McQueen tried to buy it back from him, and he wouldn't sell it to Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen wrote him a letter. I'd like to buy that back. He's like, nah, my wife drives it every day to school. And she's a sex school teacher, and she's just driving it every day. And it's like, and then they put it in hiding, and nobody knew where it was. And finally, it came out in the 50th anniversary of it, and the guy sold it at Barrett's after he took it on tour and stuff. The family did. And so, but it's like, whatever we have that can bless others. I'm not talking about 68 Mustang, but whoever we have bless others, may we do so. He who seeks good finds goodwill, but evil comes to him who searches for it. True. I'll finish this up. Whoever trusts in the riches will fall, but the righteous will thrive like a green leaf. He who brings trouble on his family will inherit only the wind, and the fool will be a servant to the wise. The fruit of the righteous is the tree of life, and he who wins souls is wise. You want some more wisdom in your life? Start winning souls. If righteous receive their due on earth, how much more the ungodly and the sinner? I'll quit there. It's the end of 11. But let's be wise and win some souls. Let's pray about that, folks, because I was talking to a black minister friend of mine, and he was saying that he was telling me about two of his friends, his churches. He said one of them brought in 8, and one of them brought in 10 in baptism. And it's like, that's awesome. And I said, boy, that's a good thing. I'd love to see that. I'd love to heat up our baptism font. That'd be good. And but let's pray. God, make us wise by winning some souls, you know. All right. Anybody got any comments or questions? I know I did into a lot of foolish talk. Not foolish, but just non-essential. I find that most of our study in Proverbs is for you guys that are more mature, it's self-evident. But at the same time, it's a good reminder of what God expects, what he sees. The righteous will prosper, even though sometimes it don't feel like we do, but we'll prosper. And comparatively, and I'd say you'll prosper in generations. If you walk righteously, it'll prosper. You might not all see it here, but it'll prosper here, it'll prosper here. And that's exciting to see. When you watch your grandchildren, when they prosper, that's good. You'd rather for them to prosper even than yourself. You don't even whine about yourself not prospering anymore. I want my children, my grandchildren to do well. So we love that. But if we walk righteously, that can be passed down also. All right, let's pray. Father, we thank you for your blessing on your word. Even if we just sit here and read it, God, you promise that you give us a blessing. And Lord, I pray that you'll give us your heart when it comes to how we live our lives. Let us understand that the wicked do come to ruin, and the wicked do get their pay of all their wickedness. But we're not to rejoice. We're actually to win souls and to live our lives in a generous fashion to where people understand your grace and mercy. And so I thank you, Father, for this blessing of the folks here. And I pray that we'll live our lives so generously that people will look at us and they'll want what we have. We thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen. Don't be that pig snout. Even as a man, don't be a pig snout.